You ever sit in a room thinking you're just there to patch some cracks, only to find out the whole damn foundation was rotting the entire time? Yeah. That was me. Sitting in that soft beige armchair, in that overpriced counseling office, thinking we were there to work on communication. Turns out, we were just waiting for the final curtain drop. I remember the scent of jasmine from the therapist's essential oil diffuser. It was one of those little things you don't notice until your life falls apart in front of you. Then suddenly, you remember everything. Every detail becomes a tattoo on your brain. Lindsay and I had been married 11 years. Not perfect years, but solid ones, or so I thought. She was my college sweetheart. The kind of girl who made life feel lighter when she walked into a room. We'd had our struggles, 2 rough patches around job losses, a few rocky arguments about her wanting to move closer to her sister, but we always found our way back. Or maybe I just thought we did. We started counseling 6 months ago. Lindsay said we needed a space to talk safely. I didn't fight her on it. If I'm honest, I thought it was just stress. She'd been more withdrawn, always tired, emotionally guarded in ways that weren't like her. But nothing that screamed, "My marriage is a lie." Not yet. Our therapist, Daniel, was fine. Early 40s, soft voice, the kind of guy who ends every sentence like he's asking your permission to feel something. I'll admit, I was skeptical about therapy. Not because I thought it was a joke, more because I wasn't sure we really needed it. But Lindsay insisted. And when someone you love asks for help, you give it. Now, here's the thing, I talked during those sessions. More than I thought I would. I shared how I felt like I was losing her little by little, how I missed the woman who used to surprise me with sticky notes in my lunch bag. I talked about the silences at dinner, how I'd come home and she'd be there, physically, but miles away. Daniel would nod, Lindsay would purse her lips like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Then she'd redirect. She was good at that. Always shifting the focus to how I didn't open up enough, how I got too comfortable in routine. And maybe there was truth to that, I'll own it. But every time I got close to asking what she wasn't saying, she'd find a way to detour. Until that Thursday. We were halfway through the session. Daniel was guiding us through one of those honest truth exercises. You know, where each partner has to say something they've held back out of fear. I went first. Said I felt like I wasn't chosen anymore, that it felt like she was there out of obligation, not love. That I missed being missed. Lindsay went quiet. Not unusual. She was always measured in therapy, always careful. Then she said it. 5 years ago, she had an affair. One time. It meant something, she said, but she ended it. Said she buried it because she didn't want to hurt me. Because she didn't want to destroy our family. But now, after all this time, the guilt was rotting her from the inside out. And then she looked at Daniel. That's when I knew. It wasn't just a confession. Daniel knew. He didn't flinch. Didn't blink. His silence was too still, too prepared. That kind of stillness doesn't come from surprise, it comes from already knowing. From holding a secret like a loaded gun behind your back. I sat there, stunned. My mouth open but no words forming. Not because of the cheating. But because of the betrayal that came with it, not just from her, but from the person we trusted to help us heal. The guy I told everything to. That moment, it cracked something deep inside me. And I wish I could say I stood up, stormed out, made a scene. But no. I just sat there, staring at the both of them, like I was the last guy in the room to realize the party had ended years ago. The silence after Lindsay's confession wasn't just awkward. It was dense. Heavy. The kind of quiet that wraps around your chest and squeezes like a vice. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioner, the faint ticking of Daniel's clock on the wall, even the scratch of his pen cap as he clicked it open and closed. And I realized, this wasn't the first time she'd said it out loud. just the first time I'd heard it. I didn't speak right away. Neither did she. She was watching me, waiting for my reaction like someone bracing for a storm. And Daniel, he gave me that same damn therapist face, empathetic, rehearsed, sterile. That, let's hold space for your feelings, look that suddenly made my skin crawl. She said it happened 5 years ago. Said it was someone from work. Said it ended. That it wasn't about love, just about her feeling lonely, disconnected. I don't remember everything she said after that. My ears were ringing. But I remember how she said Daniel knew, casually, like she was admitting she'd once bought an expensive pair of shoes behind my back. Just slipped it in there like it was no big deal. Said she'd confessed it in a solo session months ago. Said Daniel had helped her process it privately, because she wasn't ready to bring it into the room yet. Into the room. Like it was a dog she was waiting to house train. And he just sat there. Calm. Centered. He told me it was therapeutically appropriate, that part of his role was to let clients move at their own pace toward disclosure. That he'd encouraged her to tell me. That he was proud she finally had. Proud. That's when I laughed. Just this dry, humorless laugh that felt like it came from someone else. I looked at them, my wife and our therapist, and all I could think was what else have I been sitting in the dark about? The betrayal, oddly enough, wasn't just the affair. Don't get me wrong, that hit hard. But it was the months of therapy afterward. The way I poured my heart out. Told Daniel how I was afraid I wasn't enough for her anymore. How I felt her pulling away and couldn't figure out why. And all that time, he knew. He had the missing puzzle piece the whole time. He watched me twist myself into emotional knots, trying to fix something blindfolded. It felt like a joke. A setup. Eventually, I said something, I don't even remember what. Probably asked Daniel how long he'd known. He gave me some response about boundaries and confidentiality and how trust must be honored in every direction. It was like listening to a customer service rep explain why your flight got cancelled after they lost your luggage. Lindsay said she was sorry. Over and over. That it didn't mean anything. That she was in a bad place. That she didn't know how to tell me without losing everything. And maybe part of her believed that. But I couldn't hear her anymore. I was somewhere else. I thought about the last 5 years. The vacations we took. The nights we laid in bed watching bad movies. The inside jokes. The fights. The makeups. The time we tried for a baby and it didn't happen. And now I had to go back and rewatch all of it through this new lens, this filter of betrayal. Every memory was suddenly up for revision. After the session, I didn't drive home right away. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for at least an hour. Just staring at the dashboard. Hands on the wheel like I was waiting for someone to tell me which way to go. I thought about calling my brother. But he always liked Lindsay. Always said we were the solid couple. I didn't want to hear the shock in his voice. I thought about calling my mom. But she'd always been suspicious of therapy. Said it was a waste of money, that real problems get solved in kitchens, not offices. I didn't need the "I told you so." So I sat there. Alone. With a secret I never asked for and a marriage that suddenly felt like a stranger's. And the worst part? I didn't even feel angry yet. That would come later. People think anger explodes. Like a thunderclap. But sometimes, it seeps in. Like water through cracked drywall, slow, quiet, and deeply destructive. The next day, I woke up before Lindsay. I sat at the edge of our bed for a long time, staring at the floor like it might tell me what to do. I could hear her breathing behind me, soft, steady, like nothing had changed. But everything had. We didn't speak that morning. She made coffee. I didn't touch mine. She kissed my cheek out of habit, not affection, and I let her. My skin flinched, but I didn't move. Sometimes you don't realize how much of your life is built on muscle memory until your heart isn't in it anymore. Work was a blur. I must have answered emails, returned calls, maybe even smiled at people. But I wasn't there. Not really. I was replaying the words over and over in my mind. 5 years ago. An affair. Daniel knew. That sentence lived in my head like a foghorn. When I finally got home, the lights were dim. Lindsay was cooking something that smelled like rosemary and guilt. I watched her from the hallway for a second, just watching her back move as she stirred the pot. Like this was just another Thursday night. She turned and jumped a little when she saw me. Said I scared her. Then asked if I wanted dinner. I told her no. She nodded. Said she understood. Said she'd leave me alone. I didn't say anything. I wish I could say I left that night. Packed a bag. Slammed a door. But I didn't. Because the truth is, I wasn't ready to let go of the version of her I had loved. The version that didn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. The anger didn't come in a single burst. It came in moments. When I found the Christmas ornament we bought that same year she cheated. The one we had custom made with our names carved into wood like we were a couple out of a Hallmark movie. When I remembered our anniversary trip to the lake, how she cried when I gave her that necklace. Now I couldn't tell if it was gratitude, or guilt. When I opened my email to find a reminder from Daniel about our next session. As if we were just gonna pick up where we left off. Like he hadn't sat there, week after week, letting me bleed out emotionally while guarding her secret like a vault. I didn't reply to him. That night, I slept on the couch. Or pretended to. She came downstairs around 2 a.m. and stood over me. I could feel her eyes on me in the dark. She whispered that she didn't want to lose me. I didn't move. She said she still loved me. I said nothing. And for the first time, I think she understood the difference between being forgiven and being tolerated. I started thinking about everything I'd given up for her. All the times I bent to make her comfortable. All the sacrifices I never tallied because that's what love is supposed to be, right? A quiet ledger of compromises you don't expect repayment for. But now that ledger was bleeding red ink. And I couldn't help but wonder, what else did I not know? What else had I let slide because I trusted her eyes more than my own instincts? I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at me. At the version of myself that overlooked the signs. At the version that thought therapy was about growth, not confession. At the version that kept showing up, believing love alone could fix what honesty had already shattered. That night, I pulled out a suitcase from the closet. Just placed it quietly beside the bed. I didn't pack. Not yet. I just needed her to see it. To know that something had shifted. That stain wasn't a given anymore. There's something about a suitcase sitting in plain sight that changes the air in a room. It doesn't even need to be packed. It just lingers. Like a warning. Like a question nobody wants to answer. Lindsay saw it the next morning. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at it while she got dressed, like she was trying to figure out if it was a threat or a plea. I didn't give her anything. No explanation. No reaction. I was done being the one who bridged the silence. Eventually she asked if I was leaving. I told her I hadn't decided yet. She nodded like she understood, but her eyes said otherwise. She was unraveling. You could see it in the way she kept fidgeting with her necklace, the same one I gave her 5 years ago. That thing used to mean something. Now, it just looked like a souvenir from a lie. That day was quiet. Awkward. We were two people orbiting the same space without touching. Every movement felt staged, like we were extras in a play neither of us auditioned for. She went about her routine. I watched, detached, trying to remember what it felt like to trust her. That night, she finally broke. We were in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, and I was sitting at the table staring at a glass of untouched bourbon. She asked me what I was thinking. I told her I was trying to figure out who she was. That landed harder than I expected. She dropped a dish, one of those antique ones from her grandmother, and just stared at the shattered pieces in the sink. She didn't cry. Not then. Lindsay was never one for theatrics. But her hands shook when she reached for the towel. She said she'd been carrying it for years. That it was like a stone in her chest, something that wouldn't dissolve. That it had been a moment of weakness, and she buried it so deep she thought it would die there. But secrets don't die. They fester. I asked her who he was. She told me his name, someone I vaguely remembered from a work function all those years ago. She said it only lasted a few weeks. That he moved to another city. That they don't speak anymore. I asked if she loved him. She hesitated. Said she wanted to love him, back then. But mostly because she didn't know how to face what she'd done. Because if it meant something, then maybe the guilt would have purpose. But it didn't. It was just a bad choice, born from resentment and emotional drift. I listened. Not because I was feeling generous, but because after a betrayal like that, silence is your only real leverage. She needed to explain. I didn't need to understand. Then I asked about. That was the first time she flinched. She said she didn't mean to make it a secret between them. That she just needed to say it out loud to someone before she could say it to me. That Daniel never encouraged the secrecy, just gave her time. But I didn't care about the logistics. What bothered me was sitting in that room, week after week, looking for a light switch while the man with the flashlight said nothing. I told her I wouldn't be going back to therapy with Daniel. That if we were going to keep trying, we'd find someone new. Someone who hadn't already picked a side. She agreed immediately. Too quickly. And that's when I realized something else. She wasn't just afraid of losing me. She was afraid of who she'd be without me. Because here's the thing, people like Lindsay, people who curate their image so carefully, they don't survive the fall. They need someone steady beside them to remind the world they're still worth something. That suitcase stayed by the bed for 3 more days. I didn't touch it. Neither did she. On the 4th day, I zipped it up. She was in the living room, curled up under a blanket, pretending to read. I walked past her, suitcase in hand, and for a moment, she didn't move. Then she whispered, "Please don't go." I stopped at the door. And I said something I didn't plan on saying. I don't know if I'm leaving forever. But I'm leaving tonight. Because I need to know who I am without you. The first night away was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. The kind that wraps around you like a thin blanket in winter. You're covered, but you're still cold. I stayed at a buddy's place, Eric, from college. He's one of those people you cannot talk to for 6 months and still pick up right where you left off. I called him on the drive out of our neighborhood. Didn't say much, just asked if he had a couch and some silence to spare. He didn't ask questions. Just said he'd leave the porch light on. That first night I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles. I kept trying to replay the last 5 years in my mind. Not to rewrite history, just to see it again, but this time with eyes wide open. There were moments that made more sense now. The time she picked a fight over nothing and stormed out for air. The spontaneous work retreats that popped up last minute. The way she cried when we were trying for a baby and the test came back negative, cried not just out of disappointment, but something deeper, something that might have looked like guilt if I'd known where to look. I thought I'd feel angry. But what I really felt was unmoored. It's a strange thing, grieving the person you thought your wife was while she's still alive and texting you, "Let me know if you're safe." I didn't answer her messages. Not yet. Eric tried to make me laugh the next morning. Said I looked like someone who got kicked out of his own life. I cracked half a smile, but it didn't reach all the way up. He offered to grab breakfast, but I said I needed to think. That was the truth. What I didn't say was that I wasn't sure I could eat with a stomach full of hurt. I took a long drive that day. No destination. Just highway and thoughts. I let my mind go wherever it needed. Some of it went to dark places. What if I'd never found out? What if we'd had a kid? What if I'd spent the rest of my life loving someone who'd already turned the page while I was still writing our story? But somewhere along that drive, a quieter voice started to show up. The part of me that hadn't had room to speak in years. The part that had gotten used to shrinking itself to make her feel taller. I remembered that night 3 years ago when I got a job offer out of state, a good one. She didn't want to move. Said she couldn't uproot her life. I said okay. Let it go. Maybe that was the first breadcrumb I left behind, the start of losing myself in her orbit. The second night, I stayed in a motel. Not because Eric kicked me out, but because I needed solitude. The kind you can't find on someone else's couch. I sat by the window, phone in hand, staring at her name glowing on the screen. Still unread messages. Still saying the same thing. Please let me explain. Please come home. But what was there to explain? She did what she did. And I stayed long enough after the reveal to know I wasn't running from the truth. I was walking toward it. The truth being, I didn't just want to heal what was broken between us. I wanted to rebuild me. And maybe, just maybe, the only way to do that, was without her. I came back on a Sunday. Not because I'd made up my mind, but because I was tired of living out of a bag and needed to see it all again, the life I built, from the outside looking in. Sometimes you have to walk away from a house to see the cracks in the foundation. The lawn was still mowed. Porch lights on. Like it had been waiting for me. But inside? That was different. The air felt off, heavy in a way that said, too much has been said here. And not nearly enough. Lindsay was sitting on the couch, knees tucked under her, wearing the sweatshirt I bought her on our trip to Asheville. She looked smaller somehow. And not in size, in spirit. Like someone who'd finally understood they were no longer in control of the narrative. She didn't run to hug me. Didn't cry. Just looked up and asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. Because I didn't know what else to say. We sat at the table like old friends who hadn't spoken since the war. Quiet. Cautious. She asked about my days away. I gave her the highlights, kept it brief. Said I needed space. She nodded like she'd been preparing for that answer, but her hands trembled as she passed me the mug. Then she asked the real question. Are you staying? That one hung in the air like fog. I took a sip before I answered. I told her I didn't know. I said I came back not to pick up where we left off, but to see if there was anything here worth starting over from. I told her I didn't trust her, not yet. Maybe not ever in the same way. That trust doesn't get patched up with words and time alone. It has to be earned in silence, in actions, in the space between moments where I look at her and wonder if she's being real. I told her I needed honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable, inconvenient honesty. If we had any shot, it had to be built from the wreckage, not over it like fresh paint. And then I told her something else. Something I hadn't even fully admitted to myself until that very moment. Part of me still loves you. She didn't speak right away. Just lowered her head like those words hurt more than if I'd told her I hated her. Because love, wounded love, comes with expectations. With the pain of hope. She asked what that meant for us. I said I'd stay for a while. That I'd sleep in the guest room. That I wasn't making promises, just giving us room to breathe. That we'd find a new therapist, together this time. And I'd be watching. Listening. Not to catch her in a lie, but to see if the truth between us could be rebuilt at all. That night, I sat in the guest room, door half closed, suitcase still zipped up in the corner. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a man reclaiming his name from the ashes of someone else's decisions. Maybe we'd make it. Maybe we wouldn't. But the difference now? I wasn't afraid of either outcome. Because I knew this. You can't control who breaks your heart. But you damn sure can decide who gets the chance to earn it back.